Hello and welcome into another episode of Lessons in Product Management. I'm your host, John Fontenot, and today I have Derek Osgood, the founder and CEO of Ignition, with me to talk all about product launches and how to make sure you increase the odds of success in your own product launch, So welcome to the show, Derek.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, John. Excited to jam on this.
Absolutely. So before we dive into successful product launches, I'd like to hear a little bit more about Ignition and like how it got started. What are you doing there? And maybe some about the recent product launch that you had.
Yeah, for sure. So Ignition basically came from personal pain. I've been a product manager and a product marketer for most of my career, and been through hundreds of launches. Large products, small features, campaigns, events, and the go-to-market motion. I've managed in like every tool under the sun, and I just always found them extremely lacking. The go-to-market motion is a very specific process that a lot of people tend to think of it as just kind of like a checklist. It's like a big to-do list of things that you need to do in order to get live. And so they end up managing this stuff in project management tools. But the reality is that it's an incredibly communication intensive process where different teams have very different information needs. And on top of that, you have all this context that you really need to gather to inform those processes. And there's a lot of research that you need to do at the competitive level, the customer level. So basically what we've done with Ignition is productize the go-to-market process. And so we built a platform that kind of marries together all the project management documentation and asset management that you need in order to launch a product, but is layering in research tools to help you collect competitive intelligence, collect customer research, feed that into that process, and then help you to create better go-to-market plans in a more repeatable fashion and really easily communicate that across the teams internally by pushing information outwards to them through email and Slack updates that are much more modular and designed around the way that kind of those teams consume information. So we're kind of like a marriage between a couple of different categories of tools, but what our end goal is to help product and product marketing teams to get more aligned, create more visibility into their process, and then create more repeatability in the way that they're launching both small feature releases as well as, larger product updates.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say Ignition is more for like what size of company do you think it really becomes applicable for?
Yeah, honestly, so we have companies that range from single person organizations where the founder is running this process, and they're using us for more lighter weight launches where they're kind of using our release notes tooling and some of our customer feedback tools to collect back feedback into the roadmap, all the way up to 5 to 10,000 person organizations like Square and SmartRent, where they're using us for stakeholder collaboration and the cross functional communication. So I think like our real sweet spot though is companies that have gone through some kind of inflection point, whether that's a growth inflection, they've crossed the like 50 to 100 person range, and they're starting to add salespeople, and their go-to-market starting to get more complex with more communication needs, or companies that have made the shift recently from single product company to multi-product company, and the portfolio management's getting more difficult. So that tends to be like our sweet spot, but we support companies across a big range of tools big range of sizes because everybody's launching stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking before we started recording, but number one on Product Hunt the other day from your launch. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we had a great day. Got a ton of new signups. A bunch of excitement. Built out, and it was nice, kind of like officially announcing that we were coming out of beta, which was exciting. So we've been building for a while, and we've kept the beta tag on it because stuff was a little bit, still in early stage, kind of broken, not quite done. So now everything's nicely polished, and we're ready for prime time.
That's awesome. And so we're going to cover this at the end as well. But if somebody's listening right now and they're like, I need this in my life, I'm going to pause the podcast and go look for it. Where do they go find Ignition?
Yeah, so our website is haveignition.com. And you can also always reach out to me at Derek at haveignition.com, and be always happy to jump on a call and give people a demo.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, exciting to hear about your launch. And on that note, we're going to talk all about launches today. So I know the first thing that when we were kind of prepping for this, we were saying that we were going to talk about the key elements to a successful product launch. Mm-hmm. And I'd really love to dive into that because I feel like there's a very narrow view that a lot of PMs have. And I think PMMs often feel the pain of our narrow view of
Yep.
product launches. So let's dive into the successful elements.
Yeah, so I think like the number one thing that causes that pain that you were just kind of describing is that oftentimes product teams think about the launch as the release, right? And so it's like, when did we actually push this thing to prod? But the reality is that the launch is really the customer facing announcement of the thing. And how are you communicating that? And there's a whole process that goes into this. It's, getting the product live is only one component. You need to first, like obviously PM teams know this. You need to be doing the research into customers and understand like what their real pain points are, how you should be messaging it to them, what channels those customers hang out in order to understand where to go communicate to them. So there's a bunch of upfront research on understanding competitors, understanding customers, so that you can then position the product that you're or the feature that you're shipping. You then need to obviously like build out positioning, build out messaging, build out like figure out what your rollout strategy is and like what the actual phasing is. Are you going to do a soft launch and roll it out to a small number of beta customers and not really announce it, and then announce it on the V2 of it when it's a little bit more robust? Or are you going to do a hard launch and keep the thing in stealth until people are ready, or until you're actually ready to announce it and not roll it out to anybody? So I mean, there's a bunch of considerations there around just phasing of how you're shipping this thing. But beyond the creating, positioning, messaging, all the different like assets that are needed in order to communicate that positioning and messaging, you also then need to do a lot more internal communication than a lot of product teams kind of think about doing. And oftentimes product teams are busy. So, they want to do this more, but it just kind of falls by the wayside as they're in the rush to ship things. And so, when you think about launches, the internal launch is actually a lot more important than the external customer facing launch, because you need to enable your sales team, your support team, your comms team, like all of these other teams that are going to then go engage with customers on a regular basis around the new thing that you built. They need to be armed with how to talk about it. They need to be armed with assets that they can share with customers. They need to know, your support team needs to know how to answer questions. They need to know how the product actually works. And if you don't do that stuff, then for one thing, you're not going to get the level of promotion that you want for the product or feature that you've built, because your comms team, if they don't know about the thing in advance, they can't go line up press for you. And your sales team, if they're not excited about the thing and if they don't actually know how to talk about it, they're not going to talk about it on sales calls. And your support team is going to make you look bad to customers because they're not going to be able to communicate how the thing works. So the real like process here is, first you do research, then you build the thing, then you actually need to connect all of that context into an announcement process that first announces internally and then announces externally to customers. And then you need to post-launch actually do measurement and understand the impact of that and feed all of the insights that you've gleaned from that process back into the road mapping process and kind of run that cycle all over again.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of pieces to it. I know you mentioned context at the very beginning, like context gathering, and I think that's huge. And probably like in that context gathering phase, probably a good time to start like prepping for that internal launch,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I mean, like when you talk about kind of the alignment between product and product marketing, one of the biggest frustration points that product marketing teams have is that they need a lot more lead time than you think in order to prep all of this stuff. Like it's not like they just shoot copy out of their butt and say, hey, like it's time to announce this thing. All right, I'm just going to write a few words and that's how we're going to announce it. They need to actually go do the same level of research that a product team does into the customer to understand what to build. They need to do that same level of research to understand how to communicate it to that customer. And so ideally, the product and product marketing team are working in lockstep all the way from the very first minute that something even becomes a concept that is getting researched. And so like product should be working with product marketing to do all the research, and product marketing can take a lot of the burden off of product when doing that stuff. And so, yeah, like all the way through this process, the second that you start thinking about building something, you should be starting to think about what the go-to-market is for it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of jobs be done research, and I agree completely, because I actually got to talk to Bob Mesta about a year ago, and I had this same like revelation when I started introducing PMMs to the early customer research. But it's like they should be brought in because the same information you're hearing that helps you inform how you build the product also helps the PMM inform how they talk about it. And so you want to talk to customers in a way that resonates with how they already talk about things, and having them a part of that research definitely gives you the platform to do that.
Yeah, you're just going to get better positioning. You're going to get better communication of the thing that you built, and that ultimately is going to be what drives people ending up adopting it.
Absolutely. Cool. So are there other elements? I know like communication is a huge part of it. Documentation, I'm sure that trickles into like sales enablement from, but also like product support documents, and in different companies, I'm sure different people are responsible for those those things. But outside of like the written and verbal communication piece, are there other elements that are key that are often overlooked?
Yeah, so I think like one thing that is very much overlooked is how to embed, like, so there's the upfront research around building the product, but then there's also research that you can be doing through the launch process. So ideally, you are actually running a real beta process. You are shipping that product to a smaller subset of customers first. And then you're actually going and, like, again, same thing where you're shipping the product to them. You also should be shipping the first version of your go-to-market to them, and you should be starting to test messaging with them. Getting, your product marketing team should be getting on calls with those beta customers, doing and actually bouncing off the different positioning approaches that they're thinking about taking for that launch, seeing how they're reacting, what that stuff is communicating to them. So you should be doing message testing. You should also be doing pricing research at that stage, understanding like willingness to pay, and like whether or not people are actually, you're packaging the product in the proper way that resonates with the way that customers think about the thing. And you should also be collecting ammo for that announcement. Like, your launch is going to be infinitely more successful if you're not just saying, hey, we built a thing, but you're saying, hey, we built a thing, and here are 5 customers who are using it in XYZ ways. And so you should already have testimonials, you should have case studies, you should have all that stuff built out from within your beta phase. And if you're not actually creating that process, then you're going to launch and you're going to announce the thing, and customers just aren't going to believe it, because believability is the number one most impactful thing. And like, we've even seen this, with our launch, we just, we did an announcement, and we've launched things in the past. We've, done our own promotion around our product, and it's been us kind of shouting from the rooftop, but then like a couple of people posted on their own about how much they loved our product, around this launch. And that couple of people just kind of like whispering from the top of the mountain ended up driving, I would say, double what the lead volume of our announcement was. And so if you can get customers to advocate for it, you can have customer proof points that are built out through that, early shipping process. It's just going to make everything else that you do way more impactful.
So I'm going to take a contrarian stance real quick, and then get your take on it.
Yeah.
So I'm a believer in this too, right? Where you have like a customer development program or like a beta program or something, and maybe you have like a sweetened deal for them to be part of this early user access. But like, what about the person thinking? So I'm kind of putting myself in their shoes, maybe asking this question of, well, if you can get those early customers without an announcement, why don't you just announce and then get those early customers, and then reinforce the messaging with like follow-up announcements about your launch with those customers? I guess what's your gut reaction to that?
Yeah, so I mean, part of this is like you lose impact. So you kind of only have like one bullet when it comes to launching a product for the first time, right? And so if you're going to go out, like, especially if you're going out and trying to get press, for example, the press doesn't want to write about old news. So they're not going to cover something that you have already made an announcement, like you have something sitting on your blog for 6 months about. Realistically, what they want is they want something coming out of stealth. So you should have that like structured process where you can go collect that customer feedback from your existing customers quietly, and then make a bigger splash with all of your channels getting activated all at once, later on. But the reality is, like, I think where there ends up emerging friction between, marketing and product teams is often that product marketing wants to maximize the impact of that announcement, right? And so they're trying to actually, line everything up to be this big splashy launch at the time of release. But product wants to go collect feedback from real life users. And so they want to ship things, and iterate quickly and be agile. And I think those two things don't necessarily need to be in conflict, right? So like the reality is just don't launch until you actually have you've done the couple of releases that get you to where you want to be on the product side of things. So, you need to uncouple the concept of like, we're releasing the thing to prod and that's when we're going to announce it. And that's when we're going to go make noise about it. You can make noise about it a little bit later and, just be a little bit more thoughtful and rigorous with the beta customers up front.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it touches back on potentially the point that I just kind of flippantly threw out of like sweetening the deal for those early customers. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and I've heard some founders say that like when they launch new products, the first X number of customers will have it free forever if they pay like a one-time small fee just to show that they have enough value in it. And the value they get back for that is maybe they become like a customer advisory board that they can always like go back to for feedback. But how do you think about that in terms of like, how do you like when you have a brand new market that's not, or a brand new product that's not proven in market, but you're trying to get early adopters? Like what are some of the things maybe tactically that you've seen work?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what you just described is a big one. It's make people feel like they're part of a special club, right? Like, human psychology just is such that if you feel like you have insider knowledge about something, you're going to be drastically more likely to one, engage with it, and then also like to share it around with your friends. So I think incentivizing early adopters and making them feel like they are getting both a special deal, but also that their value, that their input is actually helping to shape that product, and that they have like a real voice. That's incredibly impactful. I think at a more tactical level, there's a lot of like leverage other people's platforms. Like as much as you can, find partnerships, find platforms like Product Hunt or like that can amplify your message and you're not just kind of like shouting it through your own owned channels. That's incredibly impactful. And again, just try and activate those like early adopters as promoters and as communicators of the product, and see where you can find ways for them to tell their story, whether that's through social media or creating case studies with you, or whatever mode you actually want to have them engage with. But getting early customers, like a lot of it's oftentimes, especially at the earliest stages of companies when you are still like a founder doing this stuff, it's a lot of kind of hand-to-hand combat where you're going to go send a lot of cold emails and you're going to go ping people on LinkedIn and find people one-on-one and make them feel like you are asking them for feedback more so than that you are actually like launching a product to them. And don't make it feel salesy until they're getting value out of it. Most people are generally pretty happy to feed their ego and give feedback on an idea, and they like feeling like they're helping to shape an early founder's product. And so you can typically find a few of those folks that way, and then it's your job after that to make sure that you then turn them into advocates over the longer term.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that as well. And you mentioned value. And I think that's the other thing that could be potentially overlooked in like this early customer development program, or however you label it, where pricing becomes something where you might get hung up on as a company and as a team. I'm saying, how do we price this new thing without data, without like real customers using it? And it feels like in that early time period, as you're getting this feedback from your advisory board, right, you're able to actually see what is the value we thought we were producing and what is the value they're actually getting out of it. And it feels like that would help inform the pricing model when you actually do launch.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, pricing as a whole, we could do a whole pod on pricing. It's a whole big topic, but
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, like pricing is a lot more science than it is. Like everybody thinks that it's just kind of art and you just kind of stick your finger up in the wind and you guess what price you should be billing at. And there are actual like real methodologies for coming up with like how your features should be packaged into products. There are real methodologies for figuring out like what specific price points those packages should have. I mean, we even have some pricing research baked into Ignition, and basically, the process you should be following is get customers on the platform first. Don't worry about like how you're pricing it to them. Just make sure that you're delivering value and that they've put some skin in the game, so you actually like believe that you're really delivering value that they're willing to pay for, and then go through the scientific process for coming to proper pricing and packaging, which is basically run a conjoint or max diff survey to understand packaging, then once you understand packaging, figure out your features or figure out your products, and then go run a Van Westendorp or Gabor Granger survey to understand price points. And then you come to a spot that's like 99% or better than 99% of other companies in the way that they're pricing their products, where they're just kind of guessing.
Yeah. So I know you threw out a couple of like survey examples and like types of things you could do. Are there any like go-to resources, like a book or like any resource out in the industry that you would point to of saying like this is a good place to?
Yeah, one of the best spots to go is Price Intelligently. Actually, they've rebranded since to Profitwell, but Profitwell cranks out killer content around pricing. They're kind of the pricing guys. There's also a new company that we really like called Stage, and their founders putting out some great stuff around pricing as well.
It's awesome. Yeah, I've definitely seen some of the Profitwell stuff. There's a book, Monetizing Innovation, that I thought was pretty insightful as well.
Yeah, that's another good one. I love that one, and our investors are big fans of that one as well. They're constantly bringing that one up.
Cool. So I know we only have a few minutes before we wrap, even though we probably could spend a whole other hour talking about these topics. I know like there's so many questions I could ask, but I want to get your take on like the future of software as it relates to like the interplay between product and marketing teams.
Yep. I mean, I think like my take is generally that there is today, like the software that these two teams are using has diverged because the needs are pretty specific. I mean, obviously, like with Ignition, our philosophy is that there should be a single source of truth where you are actually managing your entire product lifecycle end to end. And what that means is that you actually do need to have tools that are natively built for product and tools that are natively built for marketing that live in the same place. And I think everybody's been trying to like hack this together through, generalized project management documentation tools and like future of work tools. And it doesn't work because I was just talking to a customer yesterday and they were basically telling us, yeah, our organization is going through this big push to move everybody out of Asana that's on the marketing side into Jira because we want to just consolidate tools. And they're all revolting because Jira is so not built for marketing teams, and it's just such a bad experience for them. So I think like you're going to see bundled platforms similar to ours that are trying to marry these two things by actually building natively for each of the teams. I think you're also going to see a lot more. I mean, you're already seeing tons more integration work being done, across all these platforms trying to stitch themselves together, but I think you're going to see AI generative AI be used a lot more to help marry this stuff as well. I mean, we're even exploring a lot of this with Ignition is, seeing how you can take product roadmaps and take data out of the work that the product team is doing and translate it easily into something the marketing team can then use to build out their go-to-market strategy. So I think you'll start to see a lot more of, using large language models to parse stuff that's being done on the PRD and road mapping side on the product front, turn that into go-to-market planning and strategy on the marketing side of things.
Yeah, it feels like that's the natural collision course that we're on, because we're kind of on the inverse of that, where it's like we're trying to get product teams into like Asana.
Right.
And it's funny, like on Twitter, it's like, how do you offend a product manager in 5 words? It's like, call us a project manager.
Yeah. I think that one applies to product marketers too.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, Derek. Well, I appreciate the conversation, man. Super insightful. We probably should do a round 2 sometime, just because I feel like there's so much more we can unpack around this. But before we go, just again, for the listener who wants to go check out Ignition and see how do we actually like consolidate some of these processes more efficiently, how do they find it?
Yeah. So again, like haveignition.com is the website, and we have a freemium model, so you can go sign up, try it out yourself, and if you want a demo, ping me at derek@haveignition.com.
Okay. And if somebody wants to follow you and what Ignition's doing, Twitter, LinkedIn, where you guys at?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best spot. That's where I publish most of my content. It's Derek Osgood 3, I think is my slug on LinkedIn. So
all right, cool. I'll link all that in the show notes, so that way they can go find you pretty easily.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thanks a bunch for having me. This was a blast.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. This was awesome.